Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolute masterclass on the psychology of political manipulation and hostage coercion. Now, we're looking at a truly chilling piece of source material. Sure, it reads like a fantasy narrative on the surface, but at its core, it's a clinical, terrifying breakdown of how power, terror, and psychological pressure are used to completely break a person's will. And why does this actually matter to us? Well, because the tactics we're about to see are the exact same ones used by real-world manipulators and interrogators to this very day. We're going to follow a young captive named Sansa and watch, step by step, as her captors systematically dismantle her psychological defenses. It's a pretty profound question, isn't it? Seriously, how do you convince a loyal daughter to betray her own family? You obviously don't just ask her. To understand how you systematically break a captive's will, we really have to examine the tactical dismantling of their reality. You have to isolate them, terrify them, and then, right when they're at their lowest, offer them a singular, heavily conditional lifeline. And this right here perfectly illustrates the massive cognitive dissonance our subject is facing. It's an innocent worldview crashing headfirst into a bloody procedural horror. Our captive grew up completely immersed in songs where knights never screamed and gallant princes always saved the day. But her new reality, it involves the sounds of angry curses, the moans of dying men, and stone steps literally slick with blood. This extreme contrast is the absolute foundation of her vulnerability. Her mind is just desperately trying to reconcile the fairy tales she believes in with the absolute nightmare she's actually living through. Okay, let's break this source text down into three distinct phases of manipulation. Phase 1, complete isolation. Phase 2, false saviors. Phase 3, forced coercion. And finally, the cost of compliance. Starting with Phase 1, complete isolation. The very first step in breaking a captive is wiping out their support system and wearing down their mental defenses over time. You don't just start with the interrogation, right? You start with the waiting. For 3 agonizing days, she's locked in the high tower of Magor's Holdfast. On day 1, she's trapped with her sobbing companion, Jane, entirely exposed to the muffled sounds of a literal slaughter happening just outside her door. On day 2, this deep, sonorous bell begins to toll, rumbling across the city like thunder. That signals the death of the king, which plunges her into even more uncertainty about her own family's survival. And it isn't until the morning of day 3 that a Kingsguard finally shows up to summon her.
So the really crucial takeaway here is that her captors don't just lock her up. They isolate her from answers. They feed her, roast chicken, beef and barley stew, but the servants refuse to speak a single word to her. And when she is finally escorted out, the drawbridge over the dry moat is down, and she is forced to look at a body impaled on huge iron spikes right below her. The captors are brilliant here. They let her own imagination and environmental dread do all the heavy lifting before an interrogation even officially begins.
Which brings us to Phase 2, false saviors. When she's finally escorted to the council chambers, the true trap is set. She walks into a room of men dressed entirely in mourning black, and each one of them is playing a highly specific psychological role to corner her. You've got Lord Varys wringing his soft hands, feigning this helpless pity over her situation. Then Grand Maester Pycelle acts as the aggressive threat, insisting that betrayal just comes naturally to her because she's of, quote, traitor's seed. And then there's Littlefinger, who just sits there with such intense, silent observation that it literally gives her goosebumps and makes her feel physically exposed. It's a masterfully orchestrated good cop, bad cop dynamic, just scaled up to an entire council. But before they even address the captive's fate, the queen ruthlessly strips away her last remaining vestige of familiarity. Sansa asks for her traumatized friend, Jane Poole, to be allowed to see her father. But instead of answering the question, Queen Cersei abruptly orders Jane to be removed from the equation entirely, making absolutely sure she is gone before Sansa ever returns to her room. With just one swift command, the queen severs the captive's final emotional anchor. Now she has absolutely no one to lean on. Now notice how Queen Cersei positions herself as the ultimate gaslighter here. She's playing the only kind, reasonable figure in a room full of intensely intimidating men. Picture this. She's wearing a black silk gown with 100 dark red rubies sewn into the bodice, so it almost looks as if she's weeping blood. She pats the chair beside her, lays a soft hand on Sansa's wrist, and delivers this comforting line. In a literal room of wolves, Cersei is presenting herself as the captive's one and only protector. But then, she immediately pivots. She weaponizes the captive's own desires and fears to deliver a devastating underlying threat.
She confirms that Sansa's father is a traitor, and in the very same breath, she uses Sansa's desperate fairy tale dream of marrying Prince Joffrey right against her. She validates the captive's innocence, sure, but then ties her survival and her future entirely to how useful she can be in mitigating her father's alleged crimes. And that sets us up for Phase 3, Forced Coercion.
The emotional groundwork has been laid perfectly. Now it's time to extract the ransom. The captors use a really precise 3-step mechanism to corner her. First, they present physical, shocking evidence, a stiff, blood-stained letter with her father's broken direwolf seal accusing him of treason. Second, they demand she prove her own loyalty, totally separating her identity from her family's. And third, they demand she put that loyalty into writing by extracting letters to her family, urging them to keep the king's peace. To guarantee she complies, the council cleverly uses her own sister's past aggression against her. They bring up how her sister, Arya, once defied them, stating ominously, "The blood will tell." This is just a classic manipulation tactic. It forces Sansa to frantically distance herself from her own sibling, pleading, "I'm not like Arya, I'm good." She is so desperate to prove she's the obedient one that she effectively aligns herself with her captors against her own blood. She's given this illusion that she's actually saving her father's life and securing her future as a queen. She really thinks she has agency here. But the dark reality is, she's merely acting as a scribe for her captors. When she hesitates, admitting she wouldn't even know what to say, Cersei kindly, yet with this chilling firmness, responds, "We will tell you what to write, child." It's coercion, flawlessly disguised as a collaborative rescue mission. So, with her fingers cramped, stiff, and stained with ink, she writes 4 separate letters to her family. To her mother, her brothers, her aunt, and her grandfather. Lord Varys even provides her father's own pale wax to seal them. And in doing so, she's given her captors exactly what they needed, a hostage who is actively working to disarm her own family's retaliation. Finally, Phase 4, the cost of compliance. This brings us to the tragic irony of her entire ordeal. Returned to her tower chamber, which feels even colder now that her friend Jane is truly gone, she built a fire and retreats right back into her fairy tale books. She reads stories of Florian and Jonquil and valiant princes, completely unaware of the trap she just cemented for herself. She genuinely believes she has been a good girl, that she's saved her father and her prince, using the logic of the songs she loves so much. Honestly, it is absolutely heartbreaking. And here is the profound, ultimate success of this manipulation. The terror was so overwhelming, the psychological labyrinth they built was so perfectly constructed that she entirely forgot about her own flesh and blood. She spent the entire interrogation fighting for her fairy tale future and defending herself against her sister's reputation, but she never once asked if her sister was actually safe or even alive. The captors didn't just get their letters, they successfully overwrote her fundamental loyalties in a matter of hours. So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder regarding the true psychological cost of survival. When you're thrust into a world of absolute ruthlessness, your virtues, your obedience, your love, your innocence, they don't protect you. To a skilled manipulator, they are simply the handles by which you can be controlled. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this completely changes how you view the intersection of innocence and power.